Remember Blockbuster Video? I mean, those big blue and yellow stores, they were everywhere. Feels like ancient history now, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Standing there, browsing the aisles, VHS tapes first, then DVDs. The late fees. Oh, the late fees.
And the frustration when the movie you wanted was already checked out. Now, contrast that with Netflix today.
Yeah.
Just instant streaming content that everyone's talking about globally.
It's a staggering shift. And, the story of when those two worlds collided is really telling. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph back in, 97, they pitched John Antioco, the CEO of Blockbuster.
Netflix was tiny then, losing money. Hastings was apparently super nervous.
Yeah, and Antioco, described as all relaxed in his expensive suit, basically laughed them off. Passed on buying Netflix for like $50 million just a few years later.
Wow, and then boom, 10 years later, Blockbuster's bankrupt.
It wasn't just a bad call, though. It was like a symptom, a symptom of this failure to adapt that catches so many big established companies.
So that's the question, isn't it? How did Netflix keep adapting? Not just DVDs to streaming, but then licensed content, then originals, building a whole studio. It's relentless.
It really is. And a massive part of that answer, maybe the core of it, lies in their company culture, which is, it's pretty unique, often counterintuitive.
Absolutely. So that's what this deep dive is all about. We're digging into that culture, using insights from the book No Rules Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. Reed Hastings co-wrote it himself with Aaron Meyer.
And it's not just theory, it's packed with real stories. The actual evolution of their thinking, practical examples, really gets under the hood.
So our mission today, unpack the core elements. Talent density, candor, transparency, and how that leads to freedom and responsibility. We want to understand how they connect, why they work, and frankly, sometimes why they might not work, and what we can maybe learn from it all.
Yeah, whether you lead a team, you're part of one, or you're just fascinated by how companies tick, especially successful ones. There's some powerful ideas here, ideas that might challenge how you think work has to be done.
Get ready for some aha moments, maybe.
Hopefully.
Okay, let's start with the problem Netflix saw. Why do so many successful companies, like Blockbuster, struggle to adapt? What's wrong with traditional cultures?
Well, it's a pattern, right? The source mentions Kodak missing the digital revolution they invented, Nokia completely fumbling the smartphone transition, AOL sticking with dial-up way too long.
And Reed Hastings saw it happen at his first company, Pure Software.
Exactly. Pure Software grew really fast, lots of acquisitions, and as they grew, they started adding layers, policies, controls, procedures.
Trying to manage the complexity, I guess.
Yeah, but the way they did it was the issue. When new people came in who maybe weren't as responsible or didn't quite fit the original vibe, instead of dealing with those individuals.
They made rules for everyone.
Precisely. Company-wide policies to control the behavior, not address the person. It's like putting up guardrails everywhere because a few people might drive poorly.
And the result? The source uses that phrase, dummy-proof to the environment.
Right. And the cynical, maybe inevitable outcome was that the really innovative entrepreneurial people, the ones who hated bureaucracy, they felt stifled. They left.
So you end up with an environment where only the people who are okay with being, dummy-proofed want to stay.
Yeah.
You lose your innovators.
It's a vicious cycle. Growth leads to complexity, which prompts rules, which drives away the talent you need to handle complexity and change. Reed saw this happening and consciously decided Netflix had to do the opposite.
Avoid that trap. Okay, so how did they build something different? No rules. Rules sounds like chaos, but it's clearly not.
Not at all. It's highly intentional. Think of it like building blocks. And the sequence is absolutely critical, according to the source.
Yeah, what's the first block?
Talent density. You have to start there. That's the foundation.
Talent density.
Then with that foundation, you can build the second block. Candor. Real honesty.
Okay, talent density, then candor.
Candor then makes the third block possible. Transparency. Opening things up.
Got it. TD, candor, transparency.
And only when you have those three solid blocks can you safely start removing controls and really foster freedom and responsibility, which is the ultimate goal, the payoff. Trying to give that freedom before you have the other pieces, well, the source basically says that's reckless.
All right, let's dig into that foundation then. Talent density. This goes back to a pretty rough time for Netflix, right? The 2001 layoffs?
Yeah, the dot-com bust, they had to let go about a third of their staff. Awful time. But the source frames it as this massive learning moment.
How so?
Well, after the layoffs, the remaining team was smaller, but consisted of their highest performers. And unexpectedly, the energy, the creativity, It actually went up. They realized the huge impact of having only truly excellent people working together.
So it shifted their thinking away from the company as a family.
Exactly. Families imply unconditional belonging, lifetime commitment. They shifted to thinking of Netflix as a high-performance team, like a professional sports team.
Where the goal isn't keeping everyone forever, but having the best player in every position for right now.
Precisely. Players play to stay on the team. The coach constantly looks to upgrade talent if needed. It's about collective excellence now, not guaranteed tenure.
And this leads to hiring stunning colleagues. Not just good, but genuinely outstanding.
Yes. And paying them accordingly. Top of the market. Even top of their personal market, meaning what they could command elsewhere.
The book uses that programmer rock star analogy.
Right. One amazing programmer isn't just a bit better than an average one. They can be like 10 or 25 times more productive. They see patterns, solve problems differently.
But it's not just for tech roles, the source says.
No, absolutely not. That ability to be highly creative, spot conceptual patterns, pivot when you hit a wall, that's valuable everywhere. Marketing, finance, operations. When you fill the company with people like that.
You get that walled garden of excellence.
That's the phrase. Inside that garden, high performers push each other. They challenge ideas. They move incredibly fast because you trust their judgment. You don't need layers of bureaucracy.
So paying top dollar isn't just generous, it's strategic.
Totally. The output is disproportionately higher. They even encourage people to talk to recruiters, know their market value, so Netflix can ensure they're paying top of personal market. It's almost seen as disloyal not to know your worth.
Okay, foundation built,
Yeah.
stunning colleagues, high talent density. What's the next block? Candor.
Candor. Saying what you really think directly, but with positive intent. Reed Hastings admits he wasn't naturally good at this. Conflict avoidant.
Which most of us are, right? If you can't say something nice, praise in public, criticize in private. That's the standard advice.
It is, and it often smooths things over socially. But in a high-performance environment, the source argues, corrective feedback, even though it's uncomfortable, is vital for growth. They cite that Zenger-Folkman study.
Oh yeah, where most people actually prefer corrective feedback.
Exactly. Something like 72% said they believe it helps their performance more than praise alone. Intellectually, we know it's good for us. Emotionally, still tough.
Like those speed signs on the road the book mentions, the ones that show your actual speed.
Perfect analogy from the source. Just a speed limit sign. Doesn't change behavior much. Real-time feedback. People slow down. Companies need that kind of feedback loop for performance.
But making it safe is the key, surely. How do you give tough feedback without people feeling attacked or insecure?
It comes down to belonging cues, small signals that say, you're safe here, you belong. Tone of voice, nodding, eye contact, leaders explicitly thanking people for speaking up. These cues override that primal fear response.
The book has those great anecdotes. Brian Wright seeing a junior person challenge Ted Sarandos, the chief content officer, publicly.
And Brian's thinking, okay, this guy's toast.
Right. But Sarandos apparently put his hand on the guy's shoulder, thanked him, and later told Brian, basically, we hire you for your opinions. It's disloyal to sit on feedback.
That's a massive belonging cue from the top. It signals that challenging ideas, even senior ones, is valued.
And Rochelle King emailing Reed Hastings directly after he was dismissive to Patty McCord. She said she drafted it like 100 times, still felt risky.
It always feels a bit risky. The discomfort doesn't vanish.
Right.
But the expectation is that you speak up. That silence when you see a problem or disagree is actually the disloyal act. Loyalty is helping the company improve, not protecting feelings.
Okay, but candor isn't just being blunt or mean.
Right.
The source distinguishes that.
Absolutely, critical distinction. It's not Lady Gaga's mentor saying, you're embarrassing, or that story about Justin Becker confusing being a jerk with being candid early on.
So how do they define helpful candor? The 4A model.
Yes, the 4As provide a framework.
Aim to assist.
Is your only goal to help the person or the company? Or are you just venting?
Actionable.
Can they actually do something with the feedback? Is it specific? Be better is useless. In that meeting, maybe try X instead of Y is actionable.
Appreciate that's for the receiver.
Yes. Fight defensiveness. Listen. Assume positive intent.
And accept or discard.
Also the receiver. Listen thoughtfully, but you ultimately decide if you act on it. You own your choices.
That Bianca and Rose story is wild. Bianca shouting feedback during Rose's presentation.
In most places, that's grounds for a serious talking to. But at Netflix, because it followed the 4A's aim to help Rose right then was actionable, and Rose received it with appreciation, it was seen as a gift. It helped her nail the rest of the presentation.
It takes practice, though. Coaching, monitoring.
Oh, definitely. It's asking talented people to do something not at all natural, but nonetheless incredibly helpful, as the book says. Challenge authority, give lots of feedback.
Okay, talent density enables candor. What's the third block supporting freedom? Transparency.
Transparency, opening the books, sharing information widely, reducing secrets. Reed talks about seeing managers at his old company huddled behind glass looking terrified, like geckos about to be eaten.
And that secrecy just bred anxiety and mistrust outside the room.
Totally. Contrast that with the research on secrets. Average person keeps 13, 5 they never tell anyone. Leaders probably keep more. But the source argues sharing secrets, especially sensitive stuff, builds trust incredibly fast. If someone tells you something confidential, you feel trusted.
The stuff of secrets, SOS, reorgs, firings, strategy, financials, mistakes.
Exactly. Netflix tries to eliminate SOS wherever possible. Symbolically, no private offices, no locked drawers, removing locker locks in Singapore. Physical locks imply things are hidden.
But they take it way further, right?
Yeah.
Especially with financial data. Patty McCord freaking out when they went public.
Yeah, she was apparently terrified employees would go to jail if they saw sensitive financial info and it leaked.
But Reed insisted, don't open the umbrella.
Pretty much. They decided to share financial data widely, way beyond what's legally required, even with junior employees. The logic?
Right.
It builds ownership. If you understand the business context, the numbers, the challenges, you make better decisions in your own role.
And this applies even in really tough situations, like those quiz scenarios in the book show. Reorgs, for instance.
Right. The Netflix way isn't hinting or hoping people leave quietly. It's option C. Tell the truth. Look, there's a 50% chance some roles here might be gone in 6 months. We want you to stay, but you need this info to make your own life decisions.
Sounds incredibly stressful, but the source argues it's ultimately more respectful. Gives people agency. Like Isabella, who bought a house just before her role was cut. She wished she'd known.
Exactly. Painful transparency beats harmful secrecy in the long run. It builds trust, even if it's initially shocking.
Same with the new boss hire quiz. That HBO guy felt totally mistrusted when a good announcement came as a surprise. Secrecy itself breeds mistrust.
Contrast that with him later seeing a Netflix slide titled, "These are all the things we F up last quarter." Total shock, but it built a different kind of trust and honesty.
And firing communication, not just left to pursue other opportunities.
No. Option A, tell the truth to those who benefit, respecting dignity. Like explaining Crete's verbal clumsiness was a liability. When you're honest, gossip stops. Trust increases. People understand the standards. The Jake email example is key. Specific about behavior, not personal attacks. Guideline. Would you show the email to the person let go?
What about your own mistakes? Quiz 4, the hiring flubs. Just admit it.
Yes. Reed learned this at Pure Software. Admitting mistakes to the board. Relief, more trust. Admitting to employees. Relief, more trust, and employees started sharing their own mistakes. Whisper wins and shout mistakes.
But the pratfall effect is important here, right?
Crucial nuance. If you're seen as competent and liked, admitting mistakes makes you more relatable, builds trust. If you're seen as incompetent, it just confirms it.
So build competence first if you're unproven. But for established, competent leaders, sunshining mistakes builds trust and encourages risk-taking in others.
Exactly. Summing up transparency, sharing secrets, even tough ones, builds ownership and commitment. Trusting people with info makes them trust you back. It's a virtuous cycle.
Okay. Talent density, make candor, transparency. With all that in place, now you can unleash freedom and responsibility by removing controls.
That's the payoff. Removing vacation policies, expense approvals, decision sign-offs. This is what drives the speed, innovation, and satisfaction. But, and they stress this constantly, you cannot do this safely without the other 3 blocks. It would be chaos otherwise.
Removing the vacation policy. Sounds like a recipe for empty offices.
That was the fear. Reed pictured crucial departments crippled, but the actual problem they found wasn't too much vacation, it was burnout. People like Donna, who hadn't taken a real break in 4 years, no policy, sometimes felt like no vacation.
And leadership modeling was key here. Greg Peters actually taking big vacations.
Huge. His actions spoke louder than any policy memo. Seeing him disconnect and leave at 6 p.m. gave his team, like John with his road trips, permission to do the same.
Though the source admits there were still challenges, people taking off at bad times.
Oh, yeah. The accounting director whose team member vanished during crunch time. The guy booking a cruise before a deadline. Freedom requires judgment from employees and navigation from managers. It's not friction-free.
Then, Ditching detailed expense rules for just act in Netflix's best interest.
Big shift. No rule book saying $50 for dinner. Just trust. Use your judgment based on that principle. Leslie Kilgore's examples nail it. Business class overnight to be fresh for a meeting. Maybe in Netflix's interest. Short hop. Probably not. Economy plus hotel. Maybe. It's context dependent.
The junior engineer, Nigel Baptiste, buying that $2,500 TV without asking.
Classic story. He just did it because he genuinely thought it was the fastest way to solve his testing problem. The right thing to do for Netflix. That speed, that empowerment, unthinkable at his old jobs at Microsoft or HP, shows the trust in that guideline.
And sometimes people spend less. Claudio's story.
Yeah, at Viacom, with rules, he'd spend up to the limit because he could. At Netflix, with best interest, he'd often just get a salad because that's what made sense for the business goal, not because a rule allowed more. Rigid rules can incentivize gaming the system. Trust can incentivize genuine responsibility. Back to pure software. Rules stifled. Netflix shows more freedom.
And the biggest one, no decision-making approvals needed. Letting people run with things without sign-off.
This is core to their speed. Reed's own bad call on that Alien movie DVD order showed him the boss isn't always right, especially on frontline decisions.
So the expectation is everyone develops good decision-making muscles. Senior leaders guide strategy, not micromanage execution.
Exactly. Contrast that with ideas dying on the vine waiting for CEO approval in traditional companies, or that manager quiz. Sheila has an idea you hate. The instinct is to shut it down.
But why is it okay at Netflix to let Sheila run with it, even if you think it'll fail?
Because they're in a creative market, not safety critical like aerospace or medicine. For them, the biggest risk isn't one failed project. It's not innovating, becoming irrelevant. They optimize for rapid recovery from failure, not error prevention.
So encourage bets, like Fred Smith funding FedEx with Vegas winnings.
Exactly. Kari's Mexico contest is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Her boss, Jack, thought it was dumb. But she believed, she ran it, she adjusted, it worked. Couldn't happen with layers of approval.
The innovation cycle. Farm for dissent, socialize, test, inform captain places the bet.
Right. It's individual ownership, informed captain, but informed by input, dissent, socialize, and data test. Not consensus, but informed betting.
The downloading feature story is powerful. Reed himself was against it initially.
Yeah, 1% use case, too complex. But employees like Zach pushed back. Not just arguing, but testing it. In India, Germany, looking at competitors, the data won. They added downloads because employees challenged leadership with evidence and leadership listened.
Emerson Costa, in Brazil, getting multi-million-dollar signing authority almost immediately.
He talks about being amazed, scared, and feeling that intense responsibility. My judgment should be very sharp. That's the flip side of freedom, the weight of responsibility. It made him work harder.
And when bets fail, Chris's We project, Yasemin's Yamwoldo disaster in Turkey. You don't get fired for the mistake.
Not for the mistake itself. If you acted with good intent and followed the process, you get fired for not taking risks, or crucially, for not talking openly about the screw-up.
So sunshine the failure, like the Greek merchants with green bonnets.
Exactly. Talk openly about what happened, why, what was learned. Managers help employees do this. It shows failure isn't fatal if you learn and share, which encourages more calculated risk-taking.
Yasemin's blunder sounds awful. Bad press, mad colleagues, heart in her socks.
And her dad asks if she'd be fired. Her answer sums it up. No, Dad, we get fired for not taking risks, or for not talking openly when we screw up. She sunshined it relentlessly, wasn't fired, got promoted.
So admitting big mistakes takes courage. Lean into the sunshine, but leads to forgiveness and learning. Hiding is worse.
Absolutely. These principles need reinforcement, though. They get institutionalized through practices.
Like the keeper test. Probably the most controversial piece.
It's direct. If this person quit tomorrow, would you fight to keep them? If not, maybe with relief, then give them severance now and find a star.
Applies to everyone, even Reed. Adequate performance isn't enough.
Right, because maintaining that talent density is paramount. The ethical argument they make is, people opt in knowing the bar is high, and the severance is generous 4 to 9 months' pay. Adequate performance gets an even more generous severance.
But how do employees manage the anxiety?
They encourage the keeper test prompt. Employees can ask their manager directly, how hard would you fight to keep me if I were leaving?
Oh, that's direct.
It turns fear into a concrete conversation about performance and standing. Clarity reduces long-term anxiety is the argument. And they argue it doesn't create a backstabbing culture because of transparency about why people leave. It's about the high bar, not politics. Though the fear can be real, like for Ika seeing a colleague go.
And formalizing candor. 360 reviews, but not anonymous.
Right. Anonymity reduces accountability, specificity, names force care, allow follow-up, and managers share their own feedback downwards, reverse accountability.
Ted Sarandos modeling openness again.
Yeah, and they have live 360 dinners, in-person facilitated feedback using 4As and start-stop continue, mostly developmental, all actionable.
The Ian Sabina story is key here. Inappropriate comment missed by the leader.
But the culture empowered Sabina to address Ian directly afterwards. Shows it's not just about the formal process, but empowering real-time candor.
And the French employee getting feedback about being too theoretical highlights cultural clashes.
Big time. What's valued communication in France felt unclear to Americans. Shows the need to adapt feedback style across cultures. Direct versus indirect. Formal moments help bridge those gaps.
So Keeper Test reinforces TD, 360's institutionalized candor transparency, essential mechanisms.
Keeps the culture alive, not just posters on a wall.
But taking this global must be tricky. Can't just copy-paste.
Definitely not. Reed's Swaziland tile story nails it. You can't assume shared context.
So their approach is?
Hire for cultural fit, train them in the Netflix way, and tweak the implementation for local norms.
Using tools like culture mapping.
Yeah, Aaron Meyer stuff. To spot friction. Netherlands, Japan struggled with the informed captain. Singapore needed more encouragement to challenge bosses.
Brazil needed more relationship building, even at lunch.
Japan's indirectness made candid feedback tough, needed more formal settings and style adaptation.
So core values stay, but how they're practiced adapts locally.
It's a constant learning curve for them. Okay, wrapping it up. Talent density allows candor, which enables transparency, which then allows freedom and responsibility. It's all connected. It's not chaos. It's a demanding system built for creative adaptation.
Not the predictable symphony orchestra, more like the improvising jazz band, focused on agility and learning from mistakes, because stagnation is the bigger threat for them.
And their success, stock price, subscribers, constant reinvention suggests this counterintuitive model works, especially in creative, fast-moving fields.
So for you listening, what does this mean? Maybe you can't copy Netflix, but are there elements?
Yeah.
More direct feedback, more transparency about challenges, empowering people more. How much are we held back by fear of mistakes or challenging things?
It really shows culture is a system, right? Principles, practices, behaviors, all shaping how work gets done, and if a company can adapt, not just slogans.
So final thought. If the biggest risk today isn't making a mistake, but failing to innovate, what rules in your own work, your team, might be holding back that essential creativity and speed? Is it maybe time to question them?
Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.